But, if somebody's listening into this and they say, well, I've got anxiety, I've got depression, I've got panic attacks, I can't succeed, that's like the biggest BS lie ever.
Abe Brown, a quintessential example of resilience and transformation. Born and raised in Eastern Canada, Abe's journey began with significant challenges, not benefiting from societal privileges and growing up without knowing his father. Yet, he rose above life's adversity to become a beacon of hope and leadership. From leading hundreds as a pastor to serving as an executive at one of Canada's largest charities, Abe's commitment to helping others is unwavering. As a father, husband, author, mentor, and entrepreneur, his life is a testament to overcoming adversity. Abe founded one of the fastest growing personal coaching businesses using his profound experiences to inspire and empower.
It's crazy to think that a 3-year-old can have a panic attack. And I'm assuming that you didn't have mentors at 3, 5, 10, 11, 12 years old. Like, how do you not go to a dark path? And how do you end up to the Abe Brown that we see today in front of us?
The first is my mom was just around 16 when she was by her boyfriend. My own dad, who I never knew, he abandoned us when I was a kid, but I found out years later that he drank himself to death. I mean, literally drank himself to death. They found him in a pool of blood. That pain will shape you, and that bitterness will make you into a horrible human being. You have to forgive. Like, what these guys did was wrong. Absolutely, right? Somehow I let that love touch my heart, the love of God, and when it did, I was able to forgive these guys.
There are people in my life that just pop in magically and inspire me to do things that are really uncomfortable. So a few years ago, I was telling you, I said, I want to write a book. And you're like, why don't you write one? And I was like, I didn't think I was good enough. And a couple minutes ago, you just picked up the book that you inspired me to write. And if it wasn't for this book, if it wasn't for you, that would never come to fruition.
Wow.
And this podcast would never have happened.
That's crazy.
Because I didn't have the confidence to do that. So,
Abe
Brown, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, my friend.
How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
You look great, man.
Thanks. You know what? We're going to get into a lot of different topics because 75 hard was one thing, the transformation of our physical appearance, our mental fortitude, our strength. There's a lot of things that we could talk about.
A lot of roads.
And but one of the things I do want to talk about is, like, there are a lot of people who don't know you, right?
Yeah.
They might have seen you on social media.
Yeah.
And your journey to where you came from Ontario, your upbringing, it's been a roller coaster ride. And to see you being so successful, traveling around the world on stages, meeting with presidents of countries, like, come on, man. Like, that's incredible shit, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited. But let's go back in a DeLorean, a time machine, pop open the gull wing doors, jump in, and zip back to how this all started. Because you were born and raised in Ontario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't hold it against me. But you were too, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, hey, first off, congrats to you for your success, honestly. And you're an amazing man. And I think about you often, especially using the analogy, the metaphor of a phoenix. And that's the idea of rising from the ashes. And so from the heart, thank you for being you. But I think all of us, our lives are sort of nested in the journey of others. And I think when we talk about things like privilege or an origin story or, what somebody's culture, none of us chose any of that. So it's not like somebody woke up and said, okay, I've got this multiple choice thing and I'll choose this and this. And so my story began with my mom, of course, and of course my dad. My mom was just around 16 when she was raped by her boyfriend. And that produced my brother by the time she was 17. And we grew up just outside of Toronto, GTA. And then 2 years later, I came along. My dad and my brother's dad are two different dudes. And so at this point, my mom's got 2 kids. And of course, a grade 10 education. She had dropped out of school to look after my brother, and she thought a lot about abortion, but decided I'm going to keep him, and kept me too. And thanks to her. And so by this time she was basically 19. She's got 2 kids and a grade 10 education, and her dad sort of thought that the answer to that was kicking her out. Because that's what you do when someone is promiscuous, right? And so we were basically on the street, of Toronto. This was the early 1970s. Young woman, not even an adult herself, really, 19. and 2 kids. And so, you don't really attract great men. It's not like the doctors and lawyers are coming to you and saying, hey, let's go for a date. And so, I think the men that she had to sort of be with were angry. They were alcoholic. They were abusive. And so I tell people this, and they sometimes don't believe me because maybe we judge people by the surface of what we see today. And I think that's actually one of the biggest challenges. Maybe we can go into that a bit, right? Because you look at somebody, how they appear today, and you don't realize that there's this whole journey that's created them. And so I had my first panic attack when I was about 3 years old. Wow. And that was the sound of my mom being beaten in the middle of the night by one of these guys. And so, my brother, he had heard it before, but I said, Jay, his name's Jay, what's going on? What is that? And he said, oh, that's, mom getting beat up. And so I said, well, we got to go help her. So we go down the hall, a couple of little stormtroopers. He was 5 and I was 3. And so, the beating turned on us, which was actually fine because it's a lot better to take a beating than it is to listen to the sound of your mom, and taking a beating. And so, that was just kind of how we grew up. I didn't even have the self-awareness of abuse or poverty until I kind of got into my late teens and actually, moved out. Had my last fist fight with my stepdad when I was about 15, just before I moved out. And the reality of that sort of a journey is I had my last panic attack about 2 days ago. And so, the thing that has changed is not so much the existence of anxiety or mental health, but it's just my toolkit for dealing with those issues has extremely increased, and I'm grateful for that. But, if somebody's listening into this and they say, well, I've got anxiety, I've got depression, I've got panic attacks, I can't succeed, that's like the biggest BS lie ever. It's just, what kind of tools can you learn, right? And it's acknowledging it's not your fault. Like, I was 3, and of course, listening to that sound, you're going to feel panic. But the reality of our journey is, we either grow or we die. I mean, we either become or we shrink. And so, that's a little bit about my story.
It's crazy to think that a 3-year-old can have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Because you think about those formative years, that forms the way you see the world.
Yeah.
If you're a young child and you don't see the world as a safe place, that determines how you treat others, how you adapt to situations, and for you to be able to take that trauma, because a lot of people could take trauma and use that as a crutch. And, I share trauma myself, multiple different things. And it was only a couple of years ago that I opened up about some abuse that happened to me when I was 13 years old.
Right.
And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I suppressed all this stuff. I had no idea this was happening, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm desensitized to when people say they have anxiety, depression, stuff. Like, I do have some empathy.
Yeah.
But all of us have these kind of things. Everyone's going through some stuff. So I like what you said. It's a lot of this has to do with the tools. But as a 3-year-old, and I'm assuming that you didn't have mentors at 3, 5, 10, 11, 12 years old, like how do you not go to a dark path, and how do you end up to the Abe Brown that we see today in front of us?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is that, the dark path was always calling me. And I think to some degree you could say it still is, right? Like, we're, the old sort of indigenous proverb of, you got the dark wolf on one shoulder and the good wolf on the other. And you're constantly having to choose, who am I going to be? Who am I going to feed?
Yes.
But, I think from that point, things went from bad to worse, because as I got into my teen years, there was a lot of violence that I then started to do, getting involved in a bit low-level gang activity, street fights, and, of course, dealing drugs and breaking into houses and stealing some cars. So for sure I was on a path to prison. I mean, there's no doubt about that in my mind. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, my brother, dearly loved, he's done over a decade in prison, and that's pretty hard to do in Canada. You got to work hard to do that. We have a very lenient justice system.
He's an overachiever.
In
his lane.
Absolutely, he's taken it all the way. But he's also been in and out of mental health hospitals his whole life, and really wrestled with substance abuse, and that was my trajectory. But two things happened, and they were two sort of bookends of something that then occurred in a very powerful way. The first is when I was 6 years old. It's kind of a crazy story. You could imagine, listening to the sound of my mom being beaten, experiencing abuse, and kind of just growing up in that environment. Often we'd go to bed hungry, not enough food. And so I was sitting on the floor, and at this time we were living in Oshawa, Ontario, and there was some guy on TV. I was sitting on the floor in front of the TV playing with my dinky cars, and this guy on the TV started talking about Jesus. I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's actually what happened. And he said, God is a father to the fatherless. And I know for sure that somebody is watching this who needs a father, and God wants you to know that he loves you. And if you would like, you can pick up the phone and call, and I will pray with you. And so I'm sitting there, crazy story. I turn to my mom. She's sitting on the couch behind me. I say, can I phone? And this is like, I'm so old that it's the old, remember the old rotary dial, thing?
With one of these things, one of these things to hold your phone.
That's right. So I phoned this guy, and I didn't even talk to him. I mean, I phoned some operator. But they actually prayed with me. And I can remember, like as clear as day, 6-year-old kid, like Jesus coming into my heart, like feeling God's love. And I think that just gave me hope. I started to feel like I'm not worthless. I actually, maybe there's a purpose. I, at that time, started to go to bed at night, and one of the ways I dealt with my panic attacks was I would dream, but in a good way, and I felt like God was giving me dreams. I could see myself speaking to crowds of thousands of people, and I'd never even been in a room like that or seen anything like that. But it was, and I could see it wasn't just, I'm on a stage like some big shot, but I could see tears streaming down people's eyes. I could see that broken hearts were being healed and that people were being touched. And so I thought, well, hey, maybe I have something to work towards. And then, but, because we didn't have any sort of like faith foundation or sort of support, I, of course, got into the crime and did all the stuff that you would do when you're in a dysfunctional, screwed up home. And then, when I was 16, a funny thing happened. And this is the other side of the bookend. My mom and the man that she was with at the time, they decided to move from the GTA to Halifax, of all places. Now, Halifax is a great place, but, you can imagine you go from this city at that time, 3-4 million people to, 200,000. Mm-hmm. And I was devastated. And all of my friends who had said, oh, man, anytime you want to come live with me, they all bailed on me. And so I had to go, right? I hadn't, unless I wanted to go on the street. And so, I ended up going there, and there was this big church, and, my mom decided that she was going to get her life together, and so she's going to go to church and do her thing. And so she invited me, and I had started dealing drugs there, and I thought, well, it's about 1,000 people, so maybe I'll find some customers, because I knew what these Christian kids were like at school, and they were already some of my customers there. Yeah. And I also thought, well, there's a lot of people. It's got to be some pretty girls, right? And so I go there, and I'm telling you, it was a church that was unlike any church I'd been in. I hadn't been in many churches, to be honest, but I felt again that same love of God that I had felt when I was that kid. And so, kind of at that point, I would say I made the decision to say, okay, how do I become a Christ follower? Not like some religious weirdo, but just how do I mean, this is the only thing, besides the love of my mom, this is the only love I've felt anywhere.
Wow.
And so if somebody says, well, you're crazy or you're weird, that's fine. If you could have given me that kind of love, I probably would have followed you too at that time. But, things for me began to turn around there. It wasn't a straight line, and I'm sure we'll get into that from that point on. But I started to, believe that maybe my life wasn't going to be to repeat the patterns. And just, I talk about patterns, like my own dad, who I never knew. He abandoned us when I was a kid, but, I found out years later that he drank himself to death. I mean, literally drank himself to death. They found him in a pool of blood. He had been dead in his apartment for 3 days in Ontario. My uncle on my mother's side, he basically drank himself to death. He MBA, Bay Street guy, but was a social alcoholic and basically picked up prostate cancer due to excessive alcohol. He died. On all sides of my family, mental health, substance abuse, like we all live with the weight of our culture and the weight of our origin story. But like you said, we all have a choice. So I could say, well, my trauma is my excuse, or I could say my trauma is my platform. And what do I want? Because if I say it's my excuse, then I'm going to become nothing, right? As a matter of fact, I might pull other people down with me. But if my trauma becomes my platform, then all of my pain was meant for the healing of others. And you might say, well, that's irrational. Okay, but that's better for me than the alternative. And the alternative is maybe I take people down with me. But if I believe that my pain was to help others, then my life now becomes about service. It becomes about empowering others. It becomes about how do I give rather than just looking to take.
It's interesting because I read this formula, and I've shared this a few times, that people are like, Mike, how can I change? I said, change is pain plus time.
Right on.
Right? How long you can endure this pain, you're going to change.
Right on.
Yeah, you could feel some pain, but if you go back, it's just temporary. It's not going to change you.
Yeah.
But my question is, and this is interesting because oftentimes we know that life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it.
Right on.
Your brother grew up in the same environment, yet there's two different outcomes. How did that happen? Was there a situation where you could have said, hey, little bro or big bro, let's do this together? Or did he just say, it's not for me? And then you could see this fork in the road?
It's such a powerful question because, I could give you the BS answer or the real answer. I mean, you probably want the real answer. The last time I saw my brother, because I haven't seen him now because we can't find him, my mom and I. And we're at the stage where it's like we got to hire a PI. So if somebody is a private investigator in the greater Toronto area, please reach out to me. And we'll pay you to try to track this guy down, my bro. But it was about 10 years ago and maybe 11. And I if I get emotional, don't hold that against me. Sometimes when I share the story, I do. Sometimes I don't. But my son, who is now 24, and he had only seen my brother, his uncle, in his life once up until that time. So this was the second time because, again, my brother's whole checkered past and everything. And that's hard, right? Like, this is your uncle. And my kids would always say, Dad, why can't we see more of Jay? And I would try to explain, But I'm talking to my brother, and we were in Niagara Falls. For some reason, we decided to meet there. We'd gotten a hold of each other, and my son's there, my daughter's there. I was newly married at that time. You met my beautiful wife, and we're all just kind of hanging out, and it's like a backyard campfire. And then my brother and I, we kind of go off to the side, but not far enough away that the folks at the fire couldn't hear our conversation. And so he says to me, Abe, we're going to find those MFers who did that stuff to us, and here's what we're going to do. And he outlines this plan to kill these guys who had abused us.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, and it was almost like at this point, I was 40 or 38, and he's like 40. He's 2 years older than me. And so this stuff had happened to us like 30, 35 years before. And yet to him and how he's describing it, it had just happened like that day. You could feel the emotion, the anger, the hatred.
He carried that burden with him.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
It's a heavy weight.
And he says, we're going to find them. And so I looked at him and I said, so Jay, like the plan is we're going to go to an old folks home and we're going to choke out a couple of 70-year-old men. Is that what we're doing? Like, that's actually what you're talking about. And he said, yeah, but they need to pay. Oh. And I remember just looking at him and almost with tears in my eyes, I said, Jay, like, you have to forgive. Like, what these guys did was wrong. Absolutely, right? But you have become a different person because you've carried this anger and this bitterness. This isn't who you are, but you carry that amount of poison for that long, and that shapes you. And so when people say, like, how come you and your brother ended up in different places? I actually think it's not, I wish I could say, well, it's because I'm smart or good looking or something. It has nothing to do with that. It's that somehow I let that love touch my heart. The love of God. And when it did, I was able to forgive these guys. And my brother was not able to do that. Or maybe didn't have the opportunity, or maybe, wasn't open. I don't know. I mean, I can't get inside his head. But I do know that when you carry resentment, anger, the poison of our times, where even cancel culture, it's like, well, you said this, and even though you did it when you were like 14, and I heard you in a high school yearbook, now you're 40, and I'm going to hold that against you. Like, it's like, what? Like, you can't let that go. Like Buddha, what did he say? He said that if you hang on to anger, it's like you think you're hurting the other person, but you're actually poisoning yourself. And I see that in my family. I love my brother dearly. I'd throw myself in front of a bus for him, but somehow, if he hasn't yet forgiven and let that go, that pain will shape you, and that bitterness will make you into a horrible human being.
You know, I think you're spot on, because like forgiveness is such a powerful thing. You know my story. I've been the beneficiary of forgiveness.
Yes.
And most recently, I was able to forgive a lot of people who betrayed me in the past.
Right.
And someone said, you know, it's like, would you pay for your enemy to come on vacation with you?
Right.
Right. Would you go on a beautiful beach vacation with your wife and your family?
Right.
But behind your head and your heart, there's this nagging, just anger towards people who betrayed you, said negative things.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting now. It's my wife and I, we pray for those people.
I love that.
Yeah. We pray every day.
I love that.
So I hope they're okay.
Yeah.
Because hurt people.
They do.
Right. And so I don't know what trauma or what they went through. Maybe I just happened to cross paths at the wrong place at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes we'll say, thank you, because if it wasn't for them, they taught me massive lessons.
Right.
And so, and Abe, this was recently, man. Like,
wow.
This wasn't, I wasn't walking around like this guy who had his shit together. You saw me when I was in my darkest time. And man, the power of forgiveness is so huge.
Yeah.
We need to forgive ourselves. We need to forgive other people, and you move on. You try to be the best person you could possibly be.
So when Viv, your wife, when she was able to forgive you, what did that do for you?
You know what? I looked in the mirror and I started to, without going to the detail about my father, I looked at my dad. I used to be really upset about my dad because he did certain things, right? Mm-hmm. He was a playboy. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm never going to be like this guy. Mm-hmm. Never going to be like this guy. Yeah. But then one day I look in the mirror, I'm like, holy shit, I became the guy that I was angry. I said, I'm never going to be like you.
Yeah.
And, for when Viv forgave me, it showed me what a good person looks like.
Wow.
And when you see a good person, you think, why would I hurt that person?
Yeah.
Like, why would I hurt an amazing person? Like,
yeah.
And then you take a step back and say, okay, I forgive myself. I made a mistake. I'm not the mistake. I'm not a mistake.
Of course.
Right? But,
yeah.
I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Then you move on.
Yeah.
And then you apologize, and then you talk about it. I think communication is a huge thing. One thing that's really impacted my marriage and my relationships with people is just being open and honest and communicating. I've lost a lot of people with just political views, right? Like, we get into that. I know that later on we're going to do that. Sure. But man, forgiveness is powerful stuff. It's one of the, I think the two powerful, there's multiple, but I would say forgiveness is powerful.
Yeah.
Gratitude is
Yeah.
huge, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm grateful all the time.
Yeah. And gratitude is always a choice, right?
Yeah,
because there's always something in your life that you could not be grateful for. There's always some shit that's happening. There's always someone who's letting you down. There's always someone who's disappointing you or stabbing you in the back. And yet there's also a number of things that are going well. And so where is your attention, right? Because we tend to gravitate to the thing that we're paying attention to. So if all I'm focused on is all the things that are wrong, what kind of a person does that make me?
Yeah.
But it shapes you to have gratitude. So I love that.
Yeah. Who said it? Was it Anthony Robbins? He said, where focus goes, energy flows, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And in fact, let's go back to the church aspect of it and really bring in faith, because I was agnostic for years. I was actually Catholic. Yeah. Traveled through Asia. Then Viv and I were like, we're Buddhists now.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
I remember in my basement, setting up this Buddhist temple, praying and stuff, just full out, right? Was going
very
Buddhist
nice
because I liked it, right?
It is appealing. Absolutely.
It's cool stuff.
Sure it is.
Then I went to the Stoicism, which I still do practice Stoicism. Yeah. And then one day I'm washing the dishes and I'm like, God, I don't know if you exist. Yeah. I don't know if you exist.
Yeah.
And I've told the story many times to friends, and I'm very open about my faith. And I said, look, we've been waiting 2,000 years for you, man. The world needs you right now. The world is pretty crappy. It's confused. It's scary. And
right on.
Why are you waiting for this dramatic entrance? And I said, I don't believe you exist. If you exist, show me a sign. And literally, Abe, like this energy.
Wow.
And I dropped, it was forks I was holding, right? I just dropped it
Wow.
into the sink,
Okay.
and I felt it, and I started bawling my eyes out.
Man.
I was crying.
Wow.
And then I run up to Viv and I start screaming. I'm like, he's real, he's real, he's real.
Wow.
And Viv was like, what? I'm like, he's real, he's real. And she's like, who's real? And I said, God's real.
That's awesome.
And then she's like, yeah, I told you, right? And then from there, it's weird because now all of a sudden our marriage is strong because our faith is shared. And we have this, like, I imagine us here, and then God's like wrapping his arms around us. He's like, yeah, you guys messed up. You guys had a really rough roller coaster ride, but I got your back, kind of thing. And it's such a positive ride. So when you have a relationship that is based in faith, any kind of, whatever it is, for me, it's Christ.
Yeah.
Right. I believe in it.
Yeah.
And man, you become a better person.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I've been through a failed marriage, and and we shared the same faith technically. But the interesting thing is, when you invite God in and Christ into the center of that relationship and that partnership, everything begins to change. And when people say, like, what's the difference between your first marriage and your second? I don't have a bad word to say about my ex-wife. She's the mother of 2 of my kids. I have respect upon respect for her, but I blame me. I didn't bring God into the center. When you look at, like, if, depending on how people believe in the origin story, the creation story, you got Adam and you got Eve, but first there was God. And so, God is like, hey, why don't we make somebody in our image, in our likeness? And so then he spits out Adam. So the very first thing that has to happen, I think, for a happy, healthy relationship is for you and I to recognize, women, men, you name it, we are created in the image of God. We have intrinsic worth and value. I am a secure person. I don't need 10 Rolex watches or the nice, I'll take them, but I don't need them to feel good about me. I am who I am. And then what happens is that secure person comes into relationship with this secure person who's the woman in that case, or vice versa, the woman with the man. And now what happens is we come together, and it actually says the two shall become one. Like, now that's weird, right? Because I'm married. We've been married together now for, together and dating marriage for 16 years. She is still a unique person. We have conflict. We have differences of opinion. She's very strong. I think she'd say the same thing about me. But at the end of the day, we come back to that shared partnership. And where would God like to take us, right? And I think that the first marriage, it was like you're trying so hard to make it happen on your own. You're a good person. She's a good person, but you can't pull it together. All of a sudden, you put kind of Jesus at the center, not in a weird way, but what that means in practice is when you say, oh, put Jesus in the center, it's like, well, when I'm a dick, I need to say sorry. When I'm selfish, I need to tell her, look, I'm going to change. Hopefully she does the same. And when she has maybe stepped out of line, and what happens is together we create something greater than any one of us could have before. So I love what you're saying.
It's interesting because someone asked me, is marriage a partnership?
Yeah.
And, at that time I said, yeah, it's partnership 50-50. And the guy says, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
It isn't 50-50.
Love that.
And I said, well, what is it? He said something along the lines of marriage is like charity. I'm like, what? Okay, this is going to go down a really a controversial path.
Right on.
But he goes, when you give to charity, you don't expect anything in return.
Right.
He goes, you give into your relationship, and your 100% might be, or her 100% might be your 70%. And if you're marking ticks on or a spreadsheet that's 50-50, I did this, I did that, sometimes men or women are more capable of certain aspects of the duties of a marriage.
Yeah.
I think Viv and I try to gamify things, Abe. I always think, I'm just going to try to outservice you.
Love it.
Yeah. I'm going to cook dinner. I'm going to clean up the house. And she sees that, man, this guy's, he's putting maximum effort in everything.
Right on.
You don't want to be the person who's the weak link of the marriage.
No.
So she steps up her game too. And
Absolutely.
now economically, we've 10x'd our income,
Love
our
that.
businesses, our intimacy. Like it's like, because we're trying to, I'm not saying compete with each other.
Yeah.
But we've created an ethos.
Absolutely.
We've created a culture,
Yeah.
which is important. And I think the same thing goes with friendships too.
I love that, man. Well
Let me
done.
ask you a question.
Well done.
So you moved to the next relation, and I admire the fact that you didn't bash your ex.
Yeah.
I tell people I was married twice.
Yeah.
It's just to the same woman,
Yeah.
right?
Love
But
it.
I'm a different person than I was in that first marriage.
You
and
are.
Viv is she's a completely different
Yeah.
person. So
Yeah.
I say I'm on my second chapter. Same woman, second chapter.
Right on.
But your wife, who's an amazing human being, wonderful, wonderful, beautiful person inside and out. And when I was going through my dark time, she was one of the people who never judged. She was honest. Going back to your point where she said that she's very strong.
Yeah.
She calls me.
She did.
And she says, Abe, she says, I love you. I respect you. I hold you in high regard.
Yeah.
I was really disappointed and stuff like that, but I'm still here for you.
Yeah.
Versus everyone else, they're like, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
Right? Screw
Yeah.
this guy. People love you when you're at the top, but once you drop, I don't want to be attached to this guy. Your wife stuck around. So tell me, what is it about her that you, how did you see her? How did you meet her? Because you're a white guy. And in your words, you're not really white, you're pink. We're closer to pink, right?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
So how did you meet this amazing person from the Philippines? Were you in the Philippines traveling or?
No, so she was here in Canada already working for probably 18 months, maybe 2 years. And we met through some friends, right? And, it was kind of cool because at that point, I would say I was 2 years, maybe 2.5, 3 removed from my divorce.
Yep.
Right. And I was very careful to not cross those lines. And I needed, you call it a cooling off period, but I needed time to deal with my issues because I had done some dumb things in my first marriage. And, and yet I knew that, I had 2 kids and I knew that marriage was for me, the issue. I wasn't one of these people who's like, well, that's a dumb thing. I knew that I wanted to have a partner and a companion. Right. And so, we met. And the first time we met, it's so funny. She laughs now as she tells the story, and it's true. I thought I'd be smart, and so that these days were the days when Google was just a brand new thing.
Yeah.
So I typed in into Google how do you say "Are you happy" in Filipino, Tagalog, right?
Yeah.
And it's I read it phonetically, Masaya ka ba? And so I go up to her, and we're meeting in the Starbucks in Market Mall, and I said Masaya ka ba? And she's like, who's this white guy and why is he asking me if I'm the Messiah, right? And because I guess, it's Messiah Kaba, right?
Yes,
and it's all about
intonation and inflection.
Intonation, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of screwed that up, but she could see the heart.
Yeah.
And, honestly, our first several meetings was actually just me pouring my heart out because, and I know this sounds crazy, but I didn't want to take her down a path of having her, fall in love with me or be attracted. When I put on my best face, I can be pretty attractive, but I wanted her to hear my full story and to hear some of the worst things about me. And so I just shared, here's the journey. I've got 2 kids and here's what happened. And she just listened and said, okay, thank you. And let's just see what happens. And so here we are. We dated for about 3 years. She does IT. She runs an IT company, really specialized in cybersecurity. She's crushing it. She's doing great. I just decided that, she was the person for me. Now, she comes from a completely different family. She's an Asian person raised in Asia, which is a little different, right, than an Asian person raised in Canada or something, right? Not so much because, of course, the values are still the same. But for her, family, community is everything. It's not even, I could legitimately live in a cave and be pretty happy, come out once a month, go to Costco and say hi to some people. Where I came from, isolation, that was how I survived, man. That was a survival tool. For her, it's the opposite. And I think for a lot of Filipino culture, it's so Asian culture. It's a lot more collaborative. It's a lot more of a collective mindset. It's a lot more about the we rather than the me. And I needed that. It's changed me. I've learned far more from her than she's learned from me. And now we have 2 beautiful kids, a son.
Beautiful kids.
Yeah, thank you.
He's smart.
Yeah.
One of the best photos, I think your wife sent me a photo of your Jazzy reading to your son.
Yeah.
Right? With the book that we got.
Absolutely. They love it.
Yeah.
And so, 4 kids in total and 2 with her, a boy and a girl. And the girl is just turned 10 and the boy is just over 1 year old. So it's a full package now.
There's a statistic I was reading, Abe, that so the average in the United States, the average 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce.
Yeah.
And of that, when they get married, the average duration or length is around 8 years, something. And I believe that there's a 7-year itch.
Yeah.
100% happened to me.
Yeah.
It's there. So on average, about 8 years.
Yeah.
How do you keep this spark going? Because you guys have been together how long now?
Married for 13 years and dating for about 3. So altogether now 16. It'll be 17 years pretty soon.
So you doubled the duration.
Yeah.
What's the secret there?
Well, I think that a big part of it is really like genuinely doing life together.
Yeah.
Like, we talk about partnership. I completely agree. It's not 50-50. I think it's 100-100. Like, I think that's what it is. And, I have a partner. We talk, sometimes it drives me crazy too, by the way, but it's a good thing, not a bad thing. It's not like it drives me crazy. I need to run. But like, I run my own business. She runs her business. We are partners in each other's business. And so I'm helping her. She's helping me. And we're always really just thinking, where are we going? We own properties together. We do investments together. And so I just think like, again, in my first marriage, again, likely mostly my fault, but it wasn't like that. It was a lot more, I do my thing, you do yours. And, we share a bed together and we share kids together. So I think that's the key. And my wife and I, we did something, it's interesting, like when you have kids, right? Especially young kids, because they are all consuming. Like I can't sit on the couch and not have little baby Dryra all over me, right? Yeah. He just wants time and attention. That's his right. I want to give it to him. But so we decided in December to take. This is January right now, so we took a few days in Vancouver together, and I just thought, well, I'm going to take you on a 3-day date, and it was very simple, but it was just so nice. Like to me, so I think what's a good marriage? It's when you can just hang out and just go to a coffee shop and actually be talking and not needing to scroll on your phone like the whole time. Of course, you're going to check your email and, make sure that the place is not on fire, but you're actually enjoying the presence of each other. To me, that's, and business helps, right? Because now we're inspired. Like I don't want a woman who's barefoot and pregnant like that. That is so unappealing to me, right? It's like, let's do life together. Let's do something. Yeah.
When a man and a woman, when they share, they get their stakeholders involved, who's part of their life, their business. Yeah. Things can change, because that was the demise of the first iteration of my marriage, is because I was focused here. I was an executive doing business. She had no clue. I'm coming home at 12 midnight. She's like, what the fuck? You smell like booze? Yeah. Like, what happened? What are you doing every single night?
Who are you with?
Who are you with? Yeah. Sure, I'm hosting people. I'm working my tail off. And my response was in a very arrogant way. I'm like, see all this stuff that we have? Yeah. It's because I'm doing what I'm doing now. Yeah. And so I gave myself a license to be an asshole, essentially. Sure. And when you bring them together, like when you, I look at marriages like, let's say for instance, Alex Hermosi and his wife, Tom Bilyeu and Lisa Bilyeu, those power couples, Grant Cardone and Laura Cardone or his wife, I think that's her name. But these couples, even Trump and Melania, when you do things together, and it's exactly, I'm not attracted to the barefoot and pregnant, lazy, eating bonbons, Peg Bundy type of woman. Right. And for the people watching this is an old reference. I mean, we're just aging ourselves.
Just Google it.
Married with Children. That's pretty much the reference that I just threw out there. Yeah. But man, it's cool when you have your best friend who's part of that journey with you. Let me just pivot a little bit, because you have 2 beautiful kids. And we live in a society right now where everyone, this younger generation specifically, is struggling with identity. They're trying to change the norms of their sexuality, their ethnicity, all this really divisive stuff that's coming out right now.
Interesting days.
Your children are going to be raised multicultural. Yeah. Half white, half Filipino. Yeah. Good-looking kids, travel around the world. Different. Your upbringing is not one of white privilege, which, when you look at you on the surface, rich white guy. Yeah, right? Sure. How do you instill their identity? Like, how do you help them shut off the noise that's happening and the stuff that's being fed on their phones and all this nasty crap on social media?
I don't know. I think one answer is thanking God that I don't have to do that alone. My wife is so strong. And I always tell people, like if, everyone's always scared of what they're teaching in schools about sexuality and all that. I'm like, listen, if that ever happens, my wife is going to go down and they cannot shut her up. You got a minority, whatever you want to call it, vulnerable woman, brown skin, thick accent coming up there saying, you're not teaching. Like, she has very strong values. And that's a huge part of what attracted me to her. Now, at the base of it, and you know this from your own situation with my wife, it's love. Like, I'm not into judgment, neither is she. But just because you operate from a place of love doesn't mean that you're still not okay to say, this is where we want to draw the lines, and or here's the guardrails. So I think that's really important. I think something that's also really important is having shared values.
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah.
Do you talk about that? You say this is what we believe
all the time.
Debate.
Yeah, all the time. And we really are pretty much on the same page. And when we're not, we kind of agree we're going to go with in that situation. So some situations I will just defer to her because it's just not, I'm not going to die on that hill.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right? Why would I, and why would she? And I think with our kids and the unbelievable focus today, like it actually, what's interesting to me is it drives her crazy too. We use this term, like I've heard this term lately, and it kind of grosses me out. Do you mind if I say it? I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but it's this, you hear the media say it and especially government people, and it's almost always white people who say it, and it's racialized, these racialized communities. Now, the term racialized, that's a verb, like racialized. Yeah. Somebody did something to you.
It's an action.
Right? And I'm like, well, who the fuck racialized them? Because they're talking about non-white people, and they're saying, well, this is a racialized Canadian or this, and I'm like, and my wife just hates it because she's like, every time she maybe applies for a contract and the odd time that she applies for a job, she's doing great in business, but every so often she's like, why are they making me fill out that I'm a woman, that I'm an Asian woman, that I speak all these languages, that I identify as heterosexual? Like, why can't I just be judged based on merit, competence,
skill, and
merit. And she could play the minority card or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it's the political term. And man, when we met, she was already in Canada. She was doing just fine. She didn't need me. And the odd time that somebody says, "Oh, you married him because he's gonna," listen. When we met, I was in a horror show, man. I couldn't even get a credit card. I was going through a bankruptcy. So here's my immigrant wife who's got a credit card, and I had to use her credit card because at that time my business needed a credit card so that I could rent hotel meeting rooms and do training. And I would call these hotels and I would say, I've got the cash. Can I book the room? And they'd say, no, we only hold it with a credit card. So here I go, white privilege dude, right?
Yeah.
And and I say to my brown wife, can I use your credit card? And she's like, of course you can, man. But I would always give her the cash first, right? Because I never, so it's like our whole marriage has turned all of that stuff on its head. And of course, now we're so far from that. But we look back on that and we laugh because the society that we live in every way judges people on the surface. What kind of car do you drive? How do you look? How are you heavy? Are you slim? Are you tall? Are you short? Are you strong? Are you weak? Are you brown? Are you white? Are you Asian? We just long for this place where we say it's not about that, right? And I know that's not popular. People have when I've said that in the past, they say, "Well, that's easy for you to say because you're white."
White, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but not all white people are the same. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll tell you what, you want white privilege, Justin Trudeau, that dickhead.
Thank God he's gone.
And thank God he is. And that guy is, I would take him into the back alley, right? Because he's a horrible human being with
a bad dude.
Zero integrity. He's the worst prime minister in Canadian history. But he was also not really his fault. He was born a millionaire, the child of privilege. And so, of course, he thinks he's better than everybody. That's the way he lives his life. And that's what he's been told since he was a child. A guy like me, like you take your first beating from a grown man when you're 3, You go to bed hungry at night. You just don't grow up thinking, well, there's a brown guy, I'm better than him. You actually judge people a lot more based on their character and who they are. And so I know it's a bit rich for me to say, well, let's kind of be colorblind, but that's what the great MLK Jr. would say, is we don't want to get into this place. So I think, people always say, well, do you have a diversity program? I'm like, yeah, it's called marriage. Yeah. Like a lot of these people who talk diversity, they go live with somebody who looks very much like them. But me, I often go to my house. You've been to my house how many times? And everyone's speaking a language I don't know, and everyone's a skin color that's not mine. And I love it. Why? Because every day I'm learning. Yeah. Every day I'm growing. Her culture has done so much for me. And so, I we haven't gone there, but even in my business, I've gone to more than 40 First Nations communities right across Canada. I mean, the poorest of the poor. I mean, literally on 3 different calls today with 3 brand new First Nations, almost begging us, come to our community, do for us what you've done for other communities. And these communities don't do that if they look at you and see white privilege. I can promise you that. I mean, my ancestors were the colonizers, and what they did was horrible. But these people don't judge me based on things that I never did. They don't judge me based on the color of my skin. They understand the heart of what we bring and who we are. And that's why the demand is there. So I just think that we have to get back to, well, what Martin Luther King said, right? And that is, let's go ahead and look past the surface, And I think, you use the term crutch when it comes to trauma, but you could use that for poverty. You could use that for mental health. You could use that for substance abuse. And you can also use that for, well, I'm an immigrant. Yeah. My wife has never done that. And she's repulsed by that.
Yeah, that sense of entitlement, or just, my attitude is just have an equal opportunity to succeed.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really it. What I like about your culture that you built around your friends, your family, your home is it's organic. It's not forced. Yeah. Which I don't personally like. I don't like, you have to hire this person because of, skin color. I mean, let's take a look at when Trump was almost assassinated the first time. He had 3 security guards who was half his height. He was right up to here, struggling to get a gun out of her holster. Like, it's just, Jordan Peterson says it best, when he talks about it, he's like, well, if we're talking about inclusion and diversity, how come there are no female bricklayers? Right. Or something along those lines. Yeah. Right. And I said, look, just hire the best person possible. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And I think going back to Trudeau, what's the issue is, like, we've lacked leadership for quite some time. And this is a great pivot into leadership, because that's kind of what you do for a living. Yeah. You're focusing on building leaders, coaching. Yeah. And I look at the great John Wooden. Yeah. Right. So John Wooden, I think coach, yeah. he's a coach, and he talks all about building people up. Was it Phil Jackson? Yeah. Built up Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan said, if it wasn't for Phil, this guy taught me the mental toughness for me to be able to survive in a high-stakes game. Love that. Cus D'Amato, who's the coach of Mike Tyson. Tyson said, this guy saved my life, right? If it wasn't for leaders and mentors and good role models, I don't know where the world is going to be in the next little bit. So let's quickly talk about that. What are your thoughts on the current state of leadership in society, the world, and then maybe let's talk about, like, what you're currently doing, because I really want to understand your programs. I've seen it from. I'm the beneficiary of it, man. I got a freaking book. I've spoken on thousands of stages. I'm a public speaker, man. I'm doing this cool stuff. Yeah. And if it wasn't for you doing what you're doing, it's awesome. So tell me, what are your thoughts? We're changing our leadership in our country. Yeah. Amazing leadership change. Yeah. Down south. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think leadership is such a tricky thing because, what you aim for is what you get. So in the federal government right now, and speaking Canadian, and I know your podcast is global, but in Canada, under Justin Trudeau, the public service, the federal government employees, that number has gone up by 40% in the last 9 years. But there's not a single Canadian would say they're getting 40% better service delivery. And that's because they prioritized in their hiring diversity, equity, and inclusion, which, listen, again, you don't have to convince me. I'm married into it. Like, it's not, and I didn't do that because somebody said, well, you know, you married a white person before, and so now you got to, like, you know what I mean? You got to make sure you hit your ratio. Like, I mean, come on, I fell in love with a beautiful human being. And it actually was so much more about the inside rather than the outside. That's who she is. Now, you could put her into a African body. You could probably put her into an Indian body. You could put her into an Indigenous body, an Australian body. She is who she is. None of us made that selection. And so one of the challenges, back to your leadership question, is that because our federal government prioritized a certain look, because that's really what it is, it's a surface, rather than true diversity, which is like viewpoint diversity, background diversity, actual culture diversity, you know, that has flexed up into the leadership ranks for sure. And so we ended up in Canada prioritizing looks. We ended up with Justin Trudeau. And I think, you know, then you have the wrecking ball come along, Trump. Now, I remember one of the things that blew me away was my wife and I decided in October of 2016 or 2015, we were in Palm Springs, and we're sitting in a pool at the Hilton in Palm Springs. And there's this good-looking two Vietnamese couples over there. I don't know if I told you this story before, but and they're sitting in the pool, and my wife and I are over here. And so we just moved over to them in the pool. And it was a month before the U.S. election that brought Trump in the first time. And I mean, these guys, 2 men, 2 women, they were physically beautiful, handsome dudes. The women were gorgeous. And we just started chatting with them and saying, hey, the election's coming up. Have you guys voted yet? We're just Canadian. We're dumb Canadians. We'd love to hear your take.
Yeah.
And we thought for sure that they were going to be anti-Trump, and that these guys were going to tell us how horrible he was, that he was a racist, because that's all we were hearing in the Canadian media, and that for sure they were going to vote for Hillary. And we were shocked that they said, we're voting for Trump. We love him. Yeah. This was 2015, the election that he first came into power, and we were like, why? And they said, well, because we are entrepreneurs. We came here from Vietnam with nothing.
Wow.
And we work night and day, and now we have wealth, but we had to pay the price. And we understand that Trump knows our mindset. Trump understands us. Hillary does not understand us.
That's white privilege.
Yeah, right. And so then, you know, so that happened, and then, you know, Trump did his thing. We all saw the benefits in the economy. Unbelievable. Black hiring was high. Employment was higher than it's ever been. Minority hiring was higher than it's ever been. And then, of course, Trump goes out of power for 4 years. Everybody watches the embarrassing lawfare against him, all of these charges. I mean, you want to talk about a phony
witch hunt.
Yeah. It's horrible.
It's the weaponization of the mainstream media.
Yeah. Right. And you know, Trump, listen, I mean, I've never met the guy. I think, you know, like me, he sometimes says dumb things. Like me, he sometimes does dumb things. So he's not a perfect man. That's for sure. But like, who am I? Like, am I a perfect man? Of course not. Do I wish that he spent a bit more time, you know, massaging his tone and being a bit more gentle? Sure. But I actually think that the system has been so corrupt that it's needed someone like him.
Right.
And every person, I mean, my wife and I, we have property in the U.S. We're down there quite a bit. People are overjoyed that he was elected. Not because they like everything about him, but it's a different energy. It's like, we got to break through this can't, won't, small-mindedness. We got to get back to believing in ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, sure, he used that term, make America great again, which, by the way, well, what's the alternative? You want to make America suck again?
Yeah.
Like, how about we make Canada great again? How about we make every country on earth? It's not make America great only, because when America does well, yeah, you know this. I mean, you're basically an economist, a finance guy too. You know that everybody does well. Right. But when one country, the leading country on the planet, is not doing well, it's going to drag us all down. Yeah. So I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in 4 more years of inflation and pandemic and COVID and vaccine mandates and the overreaching state and the patriarchy. I want a little bit of freedom. And I think that's what Trump brings.
I agree with you. I have to admit that his first term in 2016, I didn't know anything about him.
Sure.
And because I was raised in a more of a corporate setting, I'm thinking, okay, well, I want a polished politician. I want someone who's going to look and sound and represent the country.
Looks like and, you, man, good looking.
And then you have this guy who's like literally speaks at a grade 6 education, right?
Yeah.
And man, I misjudged him. I was like, I got into arguments with my dad because my dad was a Trump fan.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what, are you crazy? This guy's this, because I was watching way too much CNN. It was playing 24/7 in my house in Toronto. And then you fast forward 4 years, right? Yeah. And, his record speaks for himself. Then you look at the next 4 years and how they weaponized the media and said, they call him a Nazi and a fascist and all this other stuff. I'm like, man, do you remember how it was a couple of years ago?
Listen, I tell you what, I grew up where I grew up. Okay. In my neighborhood, the white people were not a majority. And so when you use the term racist, I know what a racist looks like because I would watch 200 skinheads with baseball bats on 200 black guys on the street. Yeah. And to me, that's a racist. And if I see those guys, I know what to do with them. I'll, not one on 200, but one at a time. Well, I'll take them out back, right? But when every time you don't like something that somebody says, we throw these terms out, racist, Nazi, you're a Hitler. Do people not read their history? Do they not actually realize that there's actual racists and there's actual Nazis and there's actually this thing called the Holocaust? And so what I think we're doing is degrading the conversation. Now, you can have a difference with, like you and I are, and say, hey, Trump, you need to get a bit more sophisticated. I wish you'd slow down. I wish you'd be more sensitive. That is a valid criticism. But to call somebody a Nazi because, I don't know, you don't like the way they talk, or because they would like stricter controls at their border where millions of people are streaming in. It's easy for us in Canada to look at that and say, well, you're a racist. But the reality is we don't have millions of people streaming across our border uncontrolled. We don't have our daughters being raped by undocumented immigrants. We don't have that. And so I guarantee you are Canadian, I'm a Canadian. If we had that, we would be saying the same thing.
Right.
And so I think that a lot of people have listened to the CNNs and the MSNBCs, but they don't really talk about the issues. You know what's interesting to me is the increase amongst the minority population and the immigrant population in Trump's support. It has gone through the roof. And because I do a lot of work in First Nations, they always ask me, well, do you think that First Nations people in the U.S. like Trump? And I tell them, man, yeah, actually the exit polling shows that about 67%. Now, funny thing is a lot of Canadians hate Trump because we're what are we? We're
borderline communist.
Yeah, we're like caffeinated people. I don't know.
I don't want to say communist now.
And Trump is even like, hey, be the first state. And a lot of Canadians are like, well, okay.
We're pretty socialist. I mean, we're raised with very socialist framework and values.
And listen to me, Canadians, we need to change that because that's going to wreck us. A lot of people don't know. You probably would know this, but in 1970, the 70s, we were relatively on par with the U.S. in income per person. By the time we hit into the 90s, we were at about 80%. And right now, they're telling us that we're about 60%. So what has happened as we've gotten more socialist, they've gotten more capitalist. As we've gotten more socialist, we are losing wealth and they're gaining it. And what a lot of Canadians don't know, because they just don't read or pay attention, is that the Americans do actually subsidize us to the tune of billions of dollars. Where? In our defense. Now, the only reason we have health care and very generous social benefits is because we're not spending $40 billion a year on our national defense.
Right.
How long do you think it would be before the Russians and the Chinese took over most of Canada if we didn't have the Americans protecting us? Let's just be honest. And we could not protect ourselves without spending that money on defense. And so, I think we need to have a real conversation here. And this is not to say that Trump is perfect, but what's surprising to a lot of people is that Trump is actually more popular in Canada than Trudeau.
Yeah. And going back to the point where the American people have spoken. You know, it'd be one thing if it was a really close election.
Yeah.
Man, that was a fucking landslide.
Yeah.
That was like, you cannot.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you see Jon Stewart saying, well, this is how a transition of power works nicely and it's smoothly when you have classy people involved, referring to Kamala Harris transferring the power or not Kamala, Biden transferring the power. It's like you have no... you got killed, man.
You got killed,
and the reason why Trump held it was really close.
Yeah.
So he's not, he's not relinquishing power so easily. He's going to fight for it. But when it was a landslide, I mean, what are you going to do? You can't fight for it.
Yeah.
So I think the Americans have spoken. The people have spoken. I've lost a lot of friends with my political views.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Here's one thing I always tell people. I tell this to my wife. I say, I hold very strong opinions loosely held.
Yeah. Right.
I stand by them.
Yeah.
But if you could tell me something better,
yeah.
Oh, cool. I don't have an ego. Great. I just want the best answer possible. So I hold my opinions strongly, but it's loosely held.
Yeah, me too. And I also think we have to look at what's underlying. Like Trump is not, because Trump could die tomorrow. To be honest,
he's getting old.
Wouldn't matter to me. Like I have no love for the man. I could care less, to be honest. Maybe that sounds crass. In the same way, I'm not in love with any politician.
Yeah, me too.
But here's one thing. Trump is just giving voice. And I think what our institutions have to ask, especially on the media side and the political side, is like, how did we miss it the first time? Right? Like, okay, the first time, all right, we get it. But then how did we spend 4 years with literally all the levers of power? I mean, the left on the political spectrum in the United States had everything from academia to the media to DOJ to Hollywood to all the houses of Congress.
Yeah, we can't even go down that. That's an hour conversation about the impact of Hollywood.
They spent everything you could imagine at this man, telling everybody that he was the worst. But the reason people followed him, and Trump says it best, he says, they don't hate me, they hate you. He says that to his followers, right? It's not me they hate, he says, it's you they hate. They hate the fact that you're, working class. They hate the fact that you're not educated. They hate the fact that you're not sophisticated. They hate the fact that you don't believe that we should just let people die of fentanyl, that we don't believe we should let millions of people stream over our border. They hate the fact that you don't have university education. And I think we have to get back to our politics being about listening to people. When I've been an executive, I've taken over large nonprofits, and I've had a lot of success in those fields. And one of the very first things I always do when I take over an organization or start working with people is I go on a listening tour. I have a model of leadership, and it's really simple. It's listen, learn, lead. Right? So the very first thing I want to do is listen to you and understand what are you feeling? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your pain points? And then I'm going to learn from that. And only then will I try to lead. And, Trump, for all of his flaws, I mean, the guy spent decades listening to people. Even though he's a billionaire, he found a way to channel the frustrations and the hopes and the dreams and the fears of tens of millions of people. And so, whether somebody likes Trump or not doesn't matter to me. But right now we're seeing the same shift in Canada. It's the sort of the underclass, the regular people like you and me. Like, you weren't raised in wealth either. You weren't raised in privilege, not at all. And so what happens is people like you and I and regular people, we really haven't been heard. The elites have told us what to do. They told us we needed a vaccine. They told us we needed to wear masks. They told us, we needed to vote liberal. They told us we needed to do all these things. And now we found out that actually they led us down a path that hurt us. They told us the government needed to double its debt and that there would be no consequence. And here we are with unbelievable inflation rates. And I can't tell you the number of 20, 30, and 40-year-olds I work with who are heartbroken because they're never going to... I bought my first house when I was 22 years old.
I bought a condo in Toronto in bottom of 2009 for $300,000.
Yeah.
I appraised it now at $1.3 million.
And name...
It's crazy.
Name any 20-year-old in the early 20s. How could you buy anything?
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. So the old dream was, work hard, play by the rules, like do your thing. And you're going to just be rewarded, not with like a palace, but you get a house and
Yeah.
And so
the entry point of everything is so expensive.
Yeah.
Like inflation destroys wealth.
It destroys it.
Right.
Unless you're where I am or you are. And that is, if you have assets, then inflation is great because it's like you sit there and you watch your assets go up.
Right.
But if you're that dude who doesn't yet have assets because you're so busy paying your rent, it destroys you, right? So, I don't think Trump is perfect, but I pray to God for a leader in Canada who genuinely hears people and actually does what they can do, because everybody should be able to buy a home. Everybody should be able, like, as long as you work hard, you play by the rules, you're not screwing people around. And somehow I had that growing up. I didn't have a lot, but at that time I could get into a house for $5,000. Yeah. Like, that's crazy, right? Like, it was a $53,000 home in a little town called Truro, Nova Scotia. But it was mine. I didn't care, man. I felt like a king in his castle, 800 square foot house. I'm sitting there. I got a lawn to mow. This is awesome, right?
Yeah.
You had a condo, right? Yeah. We're taking that away from people now, and that's terrible.
Crazy. Yeah, because growing up, your affordability of the house should be 3 times worth your income.
Yeah.
If your entry point to buy a house is $1 million in Toronto and let's say 600 or something thousand here, how many people are making $200,000?
Oh my goodness!
How many? Like
that's 10 times the typical income, maybe 15 times, right?
Exactly. So that the numbers are skewed. I certainly hope we get good leadership. I think I get a good feeling that the pendulum is shifting, the needle is moving.
You think so?
I think so. I feel it.
I think so. Yeah.
I think the fact that we're having this open conversation about things that I was scared I was going to be canceled. I was telling you this earlier before we press record, that I couldn't say a lot of things because canceled, fired, whatever it is. And I love the fact that, like, I'm very proud Albertan. I love the fact that I think Alberta is one of the last places where you could still speak your mind. It's very similar to Texas, right?
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of places across Canada where you're going to get canceled. You're done.
Yeah.
So I love that. And let's go back to leadership for a moment, because I know that you're involved in coaching, and that's super important to you. How do you bring out the best in people when you see them? Like, how do you do that? Because there's a generation out there that sometimes they have this victim mentality, and they don't even believe in themselves. Right?
You know, I don't know that I have a secret sauce beyond one of the things that I have discovered is the power there is in sharing story. So we run all kinds of programs, and a lot of our programs are really doing the same thing, but with different angles. And they're based on neuroscience and the science of flourishing. And one of the things we understand from the neuroscience is that story activates an unbelievable amount of the parts of your brain. When someone's sharing a story, there's like 15 different parts of your brain that light up like a Christmas tree. When they're sharing facts, statistics, it's like 2 to 4 parts of your brain. And so one of the things I found is that when I can get somebody to start to unpack and unlock and share their story, they start to see the moments of brilliance. And then my job as a coach is a mentor, a leader, however it's framed, is to keep calling them back to that. You know, so let me give you an example. You know, you can hear this story of somebody who says, I'm really struggling with something right now. And it could be, I'm trying to make a big decision, or I'm trying to maybe have a difficult conversation. And so one of the ways you help them to unpack their own brilliance is to maybe even ask them to close their eyes, and maybe not, doesn't matter. But describe a time when you faced a similar situation and you overcame it. Let's talk about that. And so you get them to share that story. And all of a sudden, their neural pathways start to light up again. And it's that memory that needs to be often toggled. Like, I've been here before. This is not actually unfamiliar territory. Now what I have is a set of choices. I can lean into that pattern of behavior and that set of choices that will allow me to kind of thrive in this situation, or I can lean into the set of choices or patterns of behavior that I'm feeling right now. And it's such a powerful thing when you see that. The other thing that I have found, and I think this one is simple, but it's also linked, is how many times am I calling somebody to remember what's strong about them rather than what's wrong? And we have so much wrong with us. Like, man, you could just analyze my performance on this podcast for the last hour, and you could pick out a lot of things that are wrong. And I acknowledge that. But there's also some things that are strong. And so the more I emphasize that with people, even with my kids, what happens is that comes to the surface. But if all I did is pick on what's wrong, I'm going to break them, and I don't want to break them.
You know, it reminds me, you brought up your kids, because someone was telling me that if you tell a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old that if you're a good boy, Santa is going to give you a toy.
Yeah.
If you tell them that if you put your tooth underneath a pillow, the tooth fairy is going to come. If you tell them the boogeyman is in the closet, they're going to believe you. Kids will believe what a parent says at that young age.
Right.
And as parents, as mentors, what you tell them, they're listening. So you tell them they're stupid, they're dumb, they can't do anything. They're going to start to believe they're stupid, dumb, and can't do anything. I'll get vulnerable for a second, and then I'll come back. But my father was never taught to become a father, a good father. I mean, he was an okay father. He was a pretty decent guy. Had his challenges as a husband, but as a father, did his best, given the fact that he came from the Philippines, had limited training. No one teaches a man to be a man.
Sure.
But he said
and no one teaches a man to be a dad.
Yeah, no one. Yeah. So he said something to my brother many, many years ago, and it stuck to him. And he says, you know what, Alfred? Alfred's my older brother. He goes, if I can't do it, you can't do it.
Okay. Wow.
And it stuck to my brother.
What a limitation, eh?
Yeah, forever. And he said over the holidays, he says, you know what, Mike? Dad made me become a better man. I said, why? He goes, I'm doing the opposite.
Wow.
I'm reinforcing love to my kids. I'm saying you can do this. You can do. It's
good for him.
Yeah, my nephews are incredible kids. And I think as friends and coaches, you're right. Like, you focus on the good in people. And also, when you're focusing on a negative, it impacts your vibration. Yeah. I feel it. If I'm focusing on the news, if I'm focusing on what's going wrong, I get pissed off.
Sure you do.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because when I was about, let's say 8 years old, definitely 7, 8 years old, I was fighting every day. And, you know, because I was getting abused, right? And I was hungry. So I'd go to school every day, and I was just angry. I didn't even know, like, what anger was really, but I couldn't articulate it. But I was fighting almost every single day. And it didn't matter if I got beat up or if I beat someone up. It didn't change how I felt. So one day I was in the playground, I kid you not, this 8-year-old kid, and I'm on top of this guy, and I'm just punching him. And the principal came up behind me, grabs me by the jacket, and this is back in the day when the principals could put their hands on you, and she pulled me off of him like this really kind of quickly. I didn't know who it was. I thought maybe, you know, somebody was attacking me. So I just turned around, and I swung, and I connected with her chin. Man, like, I Mike Tyson'd her, but I didn't knock her out. Yeah. But she was so pissed off. Yeah. She grabbed me and yanked me back to her office, and she sat me down, and she looked at me in the eye, and she said, Abe, you're such a bad kid. One day you're going to go to prison. And as soon as she said that, true story, I had this mental vision of me walking along with my leg shackles and my wrist shackles off to prison with my orange jumpsuit. Yeah. And you know, because I thought that's probably where I'm going to go. And so I go home that night, and of course my mom gets a call from the principal, and she had had many calls from the principal before, but this time the principal was super pissed off, and my mom said, what happened? And I said, and I felt bad about it. Like, I did apologize to the principal because it was completely unintentional. It was wrong. And I said, well, the principal told me that I'm a bad kid, and one day I'm going to go to prison. And my mom, who had no background in God or church or religion or spirituality, she stopped and she said, Abe, you're a good boy. She said, you did very bad today, but you're a good boy. And one day God's going to get a hold of all of your energy and use it for good. That's and as soon as she said that, these dreams that I was telling you that I had came up in my mind too. And so I tell people, like, my whole life has been, which of these two visions, am I going to be the boy in the jumpsuit, or am I going to be the guy impacting people, God using my energy? The reason I say that, in line of what you were saying about your brother and your dad, is the power there is in words. I mean, worlds are created with words. And so as a leader, as a manager, as an executive, I mean, why we exist is to elevate our people, to create an environment for them to thrive. But there's so many levers that we don't have. We can't just double their pay. We can't triple their vacation. We can't, fire the guy in the cubicle beside them who's pissing them off every day. But what we can do is change their world with our words, right? And, when you do that, you give them a future to aim so that they aim up rather than aim down. A lot of people don't really know what they're going to do with their aim. What am I intending to do today? Where am I headed? And so words, I think, activate that.
Yeah, words they have the ability to be so venomous and can destroy and hurt you, or they could uplift you.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't usually tell people, but I talk to my plants. All of a sudden, I have this goal. I just moved into a new house in Crescent Heights, by the way.
Awesome,
so you got to come over one day.
I would love to.
Yeah. I got plants. So I've never been able to keep plants alive for whatever reason. And I started to think that maybe my energy in my old house was pretty negative.
Right.
So I have all these plants.
Nice. I love to see them.
Every day I wake up, I look at them, I say, thank you for just being here.
Nice.
I talk to these freaking plants.
I love it.
And it's words, but it allows me to get the momentum that the words that are coming out of my mouth are good words.
Love that.
Right? And it's a habit. And I want to speak that because I don't want to have a sharp tongue. I don't want to be venomous.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
I do like focusing on the positive side of things, right? So
it's power in your words.
Yeah. What your mother sounds like an incredible woman. She's still alive?
She is, yeah.
Yeah.
She's doing great.
What if she was watching this, what would you tell her?
Well, I mean, I try to tell her this, probably not as much as I should, but I think we have a very good relationship. And I mean, honestly, I'm so not a misogynist because everything good in my life comes from women. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but when people, like, I kind of laugh about the fact when people say, oh, I've had a bad experience with white men. I'm like, yeah, so have I. Almost every white man I know has done me harm and pain, up to and including my own dad. But women, including my wife and my mom, have been just game changers for me because they've taught me how to be a man. And my mom is awesome. My goal, and this is, when you say, why am my wife and I so close and so in love? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I look after her parents. And we buried her dad together. He passed away, sadly. Her mom has lived with us for several years now. She's back in the Philippines. But I had a dream. And my dream was always to be able to buy my mom a place, which actually last year we were able to do. And my wife, because she's not in a position, my mom, to buy her own place. And yet my wife just absolutely loves my mom and said, we're going to do whatever it takes to help your mom. And so, what does she do now? She's actually a coach. It's kind of crazy. She works with people who have very complex addictions. And it's great for her because she's put a lot of work into her education and training. She does all of it online, and it's really helping people. She coaches and works with people all over the United States, people with, pornography addictions and sexual addictions and some type of family dysfunctions. So she has taken her pain. And so if she was listening, I would say, good job, Mom, because you didn't get bitter, you got better, and you've made a big difference in my life.
I love that. You didn't get bitter, you got better.
Yeah.
And I think we have to give credit to the women in our lives.
Man.
Same thing. I'm a mama's boy.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, again, like I think all of this stuff is just such a distraction. Like all of this talk about, like, it's just like, no, like the people in our lives make us who we are. Right. But then what we do with that is who we become. See, I'm so grateful. You're grateful for your mom too. Tell me about your mom.
My mom is one of those women that I opened the door one day. This is a couple of years ago. Opened a door in a closet and I saw all these trophies.
Okay.
Tons of trophies. I said, Mom, what is that? Right. And she said, these are my trophies. I started looking at it and she impacted, diversity in her, like, of ideas in the Ministry of Attorney General many years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. In Ontario.
Yeah, in Ontario. She wrote her first book, right, called Oracle of Wisdom, which is lessons from senior citizens. She created a program when she retired called Seniors in Action. And Seniors in Action it's inspiring these older people because they still have purpose. They still
sure
have
do.
the
So much
ability
to
to
give.
give.
Yeah.
And so she created programs where they could learn how to play musical instruments. You got time. You're an old person, right?
Love
You're
it.
retired. So now these elderly senior citizens are learning how to play ukulele. They're learning how
So
to work
good.
out. It's interesting stuff.
So your mom, when did she come to Canada?
75.
How old was she?
She must have been in her 20s.
That's
something.
amazing.
Yeah. And so I look at her, but the awards, the reason why that story is impactful, I said, why don't you post these awards and trophies?
Yeah.
She's like, I didn't want to make your dad feel bad, right?
Okay, where's that?
And so she was hiding her
greatness.
Her greatness, and it's only until she retired that we found this out. Like she's met many of the premiers, prime ministers. Like they know who she is. So
That's
she's done a lot
amazing.
of cool things.
Good for
and I
you.
asked her, I said,
Good
well, so
for
what are
her.
you doing? When people ask, so what do you do? She says she's a student. She's thinking about doing her MBA. She's like 70 something, going to do her MBA.
Amazing. I think when you're a senior,
Cool.
you can do it for no cost too, I think.
No way.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
I should tell her that.
You should.
I didn't know that.
And for sure, if not in Ontario, there's Alberta universities that will do that for
Is that
seniors.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
And
think
it's
there's so much
the full
wisdom.
thing. Oh, there is.
I think the younger generation,
They need it.
miss out on the opportunity to learn from that older generation.
And they want it.
Yeah.
When you talk to them, when I talk to people in their 20s, they're like, man, I want to talk to somebody who's wise. Not someone who's going to judge me or tell me what to do, but I just want to pick their brain.
Yeah, because that's how knowledge has been passed on from generation. You sat around a campfire, you talked. That's how, before the internet.
Yeah.
That's how they did it.
That's awesome.
And I certainly hope that there's a lot more respect towards that generation. They have a lot to contribute.
They do.
You know, the last thing I want to talk about, because we talked about your origin story, how you got to where you are, your marriage. This is such a really good story. And then you're transforming lives. One of the things you got me into, and as you walked into the door earlier, I was like, man, this guy's in great shape. And you were traveling, and some people thought you were an MMA fighter, right? But you remember years ago, like we were excessively drinking.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
I was 20 pounds heavier than I am now. You were probably how much?
I was 40 pounds
You're 40
heavier.
pounds heavier.
Yeah, 40 pounds heavier.
Man.
Yeah.
So you did this transformational. I want to touch on that because
Yeah, sure.
I think
Love to talk about that.
it's easy to talk about. People want to talk about the motivational stuff.
Yeah.
But they think it's too hard.
Right.
And when I saw you as a 40-something-year-old get a six-pack, get jacked, and 10x his income and start doing all these amazing things, that 30-year-old or 25-year-old or 40-year-old should not have an excuse. Like, what did you do to transform and quantum leap your life to where you are now?
Well, I think a lot of it was, so I'll tell you what I did and then maybe why I did it. So right around the end of 2019, just before COVID happened, in 2019, I had set a goal for myself, and it's a silly goal, but I'm a dummy, so I set dumb goals. And it was like, by the end of this year, I'm going to do 20 pull-ups, like able to do 20 pull-ups consecutively. And by the end of the year, man, like, and I've always been a strong guy because I'm well, not even that. It's just the way my body's built. Like I'm low to the ground. I'm hard to knock off. I have
stout.
I'm strong. Yeah, stout. yeah. And at the end of the year, I couldn't even do 3 pull-ups.
Yeah.
So I could not lift my own body weight 3 times up to the bar, and I was ashamed. But then COVID happened, and like everybody, I'm like, well, this is great, man. Skip the dishes all the time and pajamas. And what I did was I, around the middle of June, 2020 now, looked in the mirror one day, and I'm just like, holy, like, who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, that is not the man I remember. And at that point, I stepped on the scale. I'm not a tall guy. I'm about 5'9" and I was 208 pounds. Wow. And so I said to myself, this is going to change. And so I listened to this podcast by a guy named Andy Frisella, and you can Google him. He's a pretty big deal. He's got a pretty dirty mouth if you're offended by that.
You're sensitive.
But his heart is in the right place, man. Like he it's just the way he is. But he does this program called 75 Hard, and it's that you're basically doing 5 things a day for 75 days, no exceptions. And you have to have an integrity to yourself. And if you fail on any one of these 5 things, you go back to the beginning. And so I did it. And basically the 5 things are: you drink a gallon of water every day, You eat clean, no alcohol, no sugar. You pick your diet, but it's clean. You work out twice a day, 45 minutes each, and one of them has to be outdoors. He doesn't tell you what your workout is, but you got to work out, get the heart rate up. You read 10 pages in a book, which is, I was already doing that. And then you take a picture every day, not necessarily to post, but so that you can measure and track progress. And so I just dove in, man. And in 75 days, I lost 40 pounds of fat. I gained 10 pounds of muscle. I got to about 45% muscle in my body, down to about where I am now, about 10% body fat, depending on the day, 9 to 11%, but I'm in that range all the time. Now I'm doing 100 pull-ups a day, running all the time, doing all kinds of stuff. And so, but the why is really important. God had told me around the middle of 2019, and this is actually what was behind the pull-up thing. Like, I can do 20 pull-ups, right? And I couldn't even do 3. But God had said to me, dude, you need to get in shape. And I'm like, what? God, you're telling me I need to get in shape? And he's like, because you don't know what's coming, but you're going to need more energy. And this was before the pandemic. And for a lot of people, the pandemic was horrible. But for us, the pandemic blew our business up and everything. I mean, my schedule pre-pandemic to now, it's hard to, I mean, I was always busy. But we accelerated an unbelievable way to the point of where we are now. And I didn't know that I was going to need more energy. But God was saying, you need to get in shape. Because when you're not in shape, you don't think clearly. When you're not in shape, you don't have energy to dream. When you're not in shape, you have no energy, and so you make bad decisions. And when you're not in shape, what ends up happening is you're not able to function at your best. And so for me, it was a lot about, it wasn't so much, I need to get into shape so I can take a nice picture and look good. Of course, everyone wants to look good. But for me, it's a lot more about when I'm in shape, I'm at my best. And so every day I run. I've done that for years. Every day I work out. And I tell people I do that now. It's more for my mental health than my physical health. It keeps me sharp. It gives me a chance to process. I think through problems. I pray. And I don't do 75 hard year-round. I do 75 hard now once a year. So I just finished my 5th round, I think, 5th time doing it successfully, 5th year in a row. But most of the time, I kind of live by the principles. I have a free day a couple of days a week. But most days I eat really clean, work out. And I just think, well, why not? Like, you're all going to get old, but either you get old and you're in bad shape, or you get old and you're in good shape, right? So.
Right. Well, I think I've seen the transformation. I've copied it. I've tried my best to emulate.
Great, man. You look
great,
great,
man. I'm trying, but you've inspired me to transform my life in so many different ways. That's awesome. On how I treat, my wife, how I treat my body, the overall discipline. Writing a book, doing podcasts, getting out there. Because I remember you're one of the first guys I met within our group that was on selfies every freaking day. Like, hey guys, it's Abe Brown. Good morning. Blah blah blah. I'm like, man, this guy's like consistent. Yeah. Like, I would give up after 10. I'm like, this is tiring.
Right.
But you consistently did that, and I think what you're doing is you're leaving a blueprint on how the next generation, or even someone who's lost in life, can transform their life, right? Do those simple things, man. And ultimately, it's self-love. The most disciplined version of yourself is, the best version of yourself. It's the most loving version of yourself. Absolutely. So I love what you're doing, man.
I love what you're doing too.
My last question is, like, what piece of advice would you give, younger generation, or what is there a quote or motto that you live by, and how does it impact you? Like, what's the lesson you want to leave to the world?
Well, I think you kind of nailed it, and that is, Jesus said something that I think is remarkable and yet simple, and he said, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself." And at the end of the day, we all would agree that none of us lives in a cave, none of us is living isolated. We live in community, we breathe in community, we thrive in community, but the extent to which I can do that has a lot to do with how I love myself. If I love myself, then I have the capacity to love you. And when I think about loving myself, I'm not like, hey, I'm going to go drink a bottle of red wine because I love myself, or I'm going to go sit in a spa. I love myself with my daily habits, my daily routines, my daily choices, by how I emotionally regulate, by what my mindfulness is, by forgiveness, by gratitude, by spending time in prayer, and by journaling. And then that now gives me this cup, right? Imagine this cup, if it was overflowing. Now I have something to love you with, because I started by loving myself. But I think what's happening is a lot of us are our cup is empty. We're barely getting by for ourselves, and we're feeling this pressure to love others. And then we turn on others because we're frustrated. So, love yourself, be kind to yourself, give to others. And where does that come from? Well, for me, it came from knowing I'm loved by God. And maybe that's not going to work for everybody listening in here today, but it's probably worth a try.
Abe, the world is better that you're walking on it.
No.
Right. And thank you so much for your time, your energy. How can our viewers find you? What are you doing? And how can we support your causes?
Hey, man, thank you. And by the way, you're amazing, brother. Let me just say this for those of you who tune into Michael and just being a part of his journey in a small way. I got nothing but love for you, your wife. And I'm hoping, hey, we got to talk about that land development thing. Let me see if I can be a part of that. But getting a hold of me, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find on social media, Abe Brown, A-B-E Brown. Just type that in and I'll come up on, depending on your platform. If you want to know kind of what we do in the business world, we do a lot of work around leadership development and workplace mental health. So somebody who's interested in that could check out flourishingworkplace.com. And if anything there looks interesting, always feel free to reach out. And if not, that's fine too. Just follow me on social media and I'll follow you back and we'll connect.
Awesome. Abe, great episode. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, man.
Much love.
Love you, brother.